Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast discussing meditation, the near-death experience, spiritually inspirational and transformative experiences. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, author, and teacher, Jay Spillers. I have a guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Giovanni. I'm from Ocala, Florida. I recently ran into, I ran into you in a group, and I guess you invited me here. So I thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. So why don't you tell us, you had like a near-death experience, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Near-death experience or out-of-body experience. I believe that I did die, but there's no scientific instruments around to confirm that. But I definitely was, feeling something, that when all that was happening. And then there's also the experience itself, which kind of was more of a spiritual confirmation, life-changing thing itself, So, but yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual experience for sure.
So what happened?
So how it started was the night before. I think I was 19 or 20 at the time, and I was at this party and everybody was drinking. And back then, I was a partying teenager myself, so I of course was drinking as well. And then the next morning I wasn't feeling well, and I wasn't accustomed to having like hangovers or anything like that. So for me, it just seemed like I'm just sick. I just need to go home and lay down, whatever. But it's pretty bad. It started to get worse and worse. And luckily, I had a friend who was able to drive me home, and he dropped me off. As soon as I got home, I zoomed past my mom who was in the laundry room, and I told her, I'm not feeling well. I just need to go lay down real quick, mom. I'll see you later. And zoomed past her, I went straight to my bed, and I was able to just plop myself down and lay there. And I vividly remember this part is just laying there on the bed and then looking at my ceiling light and not closing my eyes or anything like that, but just starting to float towards the ceiling light just automatically. No, not falling asleep, no anything like that. I wasn't tired. I felt really way too sick to be falling asleep. And then so I started floating towards the light, and then I automatically just kind of sat up on the side of my bed. So I thought this was kind of strange. I felt sick, but now I don't feel too as bad, but I just don't know what's going on. I guess at this point I'm kind of confused as to how everything that's happening. So I sit up on my bed, and I notice that my brother's music downstairs in the basement is really really loud, and that's kind of strange to me because I love my brother's music. He and I have the same musical taste and everything. So this is another strange thing. Like, why am I bothered by my brother's music? Why is it so bad for me? I apologize for that. I live in a very loud neighborhood. It's also loud outside my house, so I'm outside. I'm outside doing all this. I apologize. Sorry about that. But
Oh,
as
it's
I was
fine.
saying, as I was saying, his music was like really, uh, affecting me negatively. And so I got up, and then, what I thought was like me walking or like moving, it felt like it was really hard to move, to go anywhere. And then I made it out to my living room or out into my hallway outside of my door to my room. And that's about as far as I got. And I didn't want to move anymore. It was too strenuous. And I didn't think that I would be able to make it even if I tried. So I stopped. And that's where, I was like, I'll just yell for him. I'll yell and hopefully he'll hear me. And so when I go to yell, this voice that definitely was not mine just sounded like terrible. It actually sounded disgusting. It was scary for me. So I was like, Rob. My brother's name is Rob. And I was like, Rob. And it came out all groggy and gross like. And I was like, what in the world? Like, what is that? And that terrified me. I'm like, well, I got to try again. I want to try to see if I can, at least get his attention. So I tried again, and it sounded even worse. It sounded like there's two voices coming out of my mouth, and it was just sounded really, really messed up. And so at this point, I said, forget it. I'm not going downstairs. I don't care if you blast his music. I'm going back to bed because I'm scared out of my mind right now. So I turned around. I go back into my room, and as I open the door, I see myself lying in my bed, and I'm under the covers and everything, but my body's just turned the other way. And as I like, I go to shake myself awake, I notice my body's like gray. I'm not responding. Like I'm yelling and screaming. I don't know why, nothing's working. So I'm getting more and more scared, right? And then right as I go to like flip my body over and I see like, at least half of my face, that's when I, in a split second, I just wake up or come to it or whatever on my bed. And I'm still in the same position as I was when I laid there. Everything's the same. But for whatever reason, it wasn't like a waking moment. It was more of like you just snapped out of it and you're back to where you were at. So, I mean, it was like a really like a vivid distinction between, sleep and actually, it felt really real, like vivid reality. So, but that was that experience. And honestly, that experience, it led me to quit drinking for a while, and I wound up having mistakes afterwards as well. But it led me down a spiritual path to discovering God and Christ for myself. And through the actually after my near death experience, it caused me to want to investigate other people's experiences that were kind of like my own. So that's what led me to the near death experiences, which their tales of Jesus led me to like, believe in Christ myself and read the Bible and things like that. And then from then on, this happened when I was 19 or 20. So from that point on, I had all kinds of experiences from then on, resulting from this experience. I think, that was just a starting point to a wonderful, great life that I've had, recently. Rough in the beginning, but it's been great these past few years. But yeah, that's my experience.
So it's kind of like you saw a light. You saw a light, but then you also heard like maybe a demon or something.
I mean, it sounded like it didn't sound like my voice, but when I opened my mouth and this voice came out, it was what I wanted to say, it coming out through like this disgusting, yeah, like a demonic voice. But I mean, I'm gonna call myself a demon. I'm sitting here like, I was scared, out of my senses myself. I'm just like, why do I sound like this? Like, what the hell is going on? I can imagine being drunk and not being able to be like spiritually receptive or anything like that may have caused like a misstep in like some kind of spiritual communication or something like that. I don't know. Or, it was a really vivid experience for me. And yeah, I don't know. It's just nuts. This is my first time ever recounting it to, really, well, to anybody out loud like this, I guess. I think I've maybe only told maybe two or three other people in my life about it.
Well, so like you were like at the ceiling fan. Was this light did you get anything from the light? Like, did you get any peace or love or any positive
When
feelings
this,
from it?
well, yeah, when this was all going on, the pain that I was feeling seemed to somewhat subside. I was able to somewhat kind of function and think on a different level to where like I was able to like, think to walk and think to talk and think to like start, to do things. And I didn't really feel so much of the pain as I did when I was, feeling, from the hangover from the day before or anything like that. So, during this whole experience, the physical pain wasn't there, but there was kind of a fear, I guess. The fear was kind of like, I want to say painful in a way. It was a painful type of fear. So, yeah. But I think, out of all this negative, the negativity, some positive experiences, came out of it. So that's, what I'm most, happy about and glad about, I guess, out of all of this. It did take a twist though, it took me a long time to actually come to understand like maybe what happened in the long run. I had everything that happened, came to my responsibility to translate, in a way. So, it's up to me to translate the experience for myself as of what happened, how I'm going to deal with it and everything like that. And, back then the obvious message was, hey, maybe you should stop drinking. So I did for a while. And, sadly I did make a mistake again and then go back to it, but then I wound up quitting again. I've been sober for, 4 years now, going on 5. So, but yeah,
How many years ago was this experience?
this experience from, how old I am now, I want to say 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
20 or 19 years ago. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
a pretty long time ago, but it still, stands out clear as day. If something like that happens
And
to you, I don't think you'd ever forget it.
hmm. So it caused you to start to search for God.
Huh? Sorry, coming again?
Oh, it caused you to start searching for God after that experience.
Yes, it did. Beforehand, I wasn't really a believer in God, so this caused me to like switch over and convert in a way or sense. Being 19 or 20 years old, and like, I made a full-fledged commitment to actually do that. Make a commitment to God and Christ, and just discover God. Just me and God in hand. And searching out there through the near-death experiences, as well as like the Bible, but also the other pages in history that talk about people that perhaps were like led by God to do great things, and they all have this common thing in common, and it's always God. God has always given them the strength to do these incredible things. So yeah, I've kind of discovered that for myself in my recent years, just being able to progress in life and get up through a lot of difficult challenges, I guess. And being a kid, I wish I would have learned the first time. You would have thought, hey, you had this crazy, terrible experience. Why didn't you learn the first time? I couldn't answer that. Just alcohol is actually an addiction. So for me, like, when I was addicted to alcohol, it had like a really big hold on my life. Nowadays I don't really even think twice about it. I'll even serve it. I'll buy it and I'll serve it to people and everything. It's not really a big deal anymore. But I do know, because like if I'm going to drink again, I know exactly what's going to happen. There's no point in ever going back. So that's why I don't ever give it a second thought. And these days, my mind is more filled with, what can I do for my family? What can I do for, my community or something? What can I do for others rather than myself? Something.
And you said this led to other experiences too.
So not near death experiences. No. Um, this near death experience that I had was just the beginning of other spiritual experiences that would come afterwards as a result of like what this happened. And there's, I want to say, two or three major ones other than that. And then there's all these like little small things that would happen throughout my life that would just, in my mind, I'm like, that's God working right there. That's God, that's God right there. And this is God. And I'm just like, wow, all these great things are happening. But at the same time, like, I was very immature in my 20s. Now I'm 30, I'm 38, going on to be 39. And, I've been at the same job for, I want to say, 8 years. I think it's going to be 8 years this year. And, I don't think anything like that anymore. But, it's just, when I think back on it, and all the things that had happened and all these spiritual experiences, it just lets me know that, like, I'm here now, and I think this is all, for a good reason, even just to be up to this point, to be able to speak to you on this podcast. So, I appreciate that as well.
Hmm. What were some of the other experiences? What happened?
So the one that happened after when I was 19 was when I was 25. When I was 25 years old, I got shot. Okay. I was dating this girl, and she, me and her brother-in-law, I think is what it was, got into a fight this night. Again, another alcohol-induced thing. And after that, obviously I got sent to the hospital. I had to heal. I had all this time and everything to basically do whatever I want. I had to heal. I mean, there's nothing anybody can do about it. I have to sit there and just do it and let time do its thing. So during that time, that's when like I really really started getting very deep into reading like different spiritual texts or different like ancient religious texts, even as far as like the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita, or um, supposedly like the second book of Adam, and like the first book of Adam, and all these other Gnostic texts, and just everything I could find that was ancient, that was talking about God. I just wanted to read about it. And this led me to like start realizing that all these people that I'm reading about, and I've read a lot, like, and these are all these experiences that I'm reading throughout all the history. These people all had something in common, and it was God this entire time, being able to make them do all these crazy things. And it's crazy that I don't know if you ever heard like God within. That's something that the Hindus and the Buddhas have been kind of preaching about for thousands of years. But Jesus, I believe that Christianity also, Jesus teaches God within, and so did John the Baptist. if you just follow that leading, that spiritual leading within to do good things, do things that are going to benefit humanity or benefit your fellow man in some shape, way, or form. God will be there. During this experience, all this stuff. I want to say there was like almost like a download of information, like a spiritual download of all this information of wisdom and everything that was just starting to I don't know, take place, and then eventually it accumulated in me. I read this book called the Urantia book, and it basically tied everything that I've been reading about all together. And this is kind of like where it started taking off and leading me into just realizing all these things. And I changed as that in that in that time period. I want to say 6 months. I changed from being whoever I was before that to being somebody completely different, and it was good. This is a good change. Whoever that was before died, and then I became basically somebody else. And again, I'm going to say it. This lasted about 2 or 3 years before everything came tumbling down again, and I fell flat down on my face and had to get back up again and again. So this leads to the next spiritual experience, and this happened in fall of 2022. I don't know if it was November, August, September. I just know it was around that range somewhere. But between what had happened when I gotten shot and then coming up to I lived in Georgia for a while, and I had these great conversations with my roommates and stuff like that. It was good to keep up the spiritual juice then, but I wound up drinking again and getting back into that stupid lifestyle again, and everything just went out the window. Um, Again, I wound up in Florida, and I met my wife. I want to say about 9 months after being here, and she helped me to get on my feet to do all these things. And this is before I married her, but like she was the one that kind of saved me in a way during this time period. And then we had met, I want to say 10 years ago. So, we've been married for, I want to say 4 or 5 years now. But I want to say 2022 is when this experience had happened. And started off with like your average day, everything has just been fine. And I had been doing something, I think, in my room, like maybe just cleaning up in the room or doing something. But I had heard like an argument with my oldest son that he was, you know, getting mad or angry about something going on with my wife, and he had made some comments that it just like it seemed like I didn't want him to do anything to hurt himself or hurt anybody else. So it seemed to me like there was a situation, right? Like there was serious, like something serious was happening, and I felt like it was like uh, like I need to do something to act. I don't want to give away too many details, but I felt like I need to act. And in this instance, I felt the need to just do something because he might have hurt himself or he's going to hurt somebody else. So I was able to like stop him from doing that. And I didn't really hurt him or anything, but I was able to like sit him down on the couch and just lecture him hey buddy, as a family, we love you. And we want to let you know that we're always here for you. There's nothing, we're not here. Nobody's against you. We love you. We want to let you know, you're not alone. You don't have to be like in such pain and angst and anything like this. I just had this like awesome conversation with him, and I never had that in my life before. So now this enters into a whole nother experience in my life where I just learned how to, I guess, kind of be a good father.
You're listening to the Inspire Me with Jay podcast. Please do like and subscribe to the channel, bringing hope and inspiration to the world.
Yeah, that was pretty powerful. At least for me, it was.
So
Yeah.
what kind of things are you doing now? Like, are you active in a ministry? Are you, sharing? I mean, what kind of things are you doing to serve God?
So these days, um, I'm into like the Orange Book community. We talk a lot about it's Christian based. We all serve Christ as well, and we all talk about how we can all serve God better, and have try to exemplify Jesus' teachings in our lives in some shape, way, or form. We know we're not perfect, but it makes sense to at least try. Like do something. Be better, and better. And also, I make music, so I play guitar, piano, bass, drums, and I also produce. So I record music on a music production program, and I've recorded quite a bit of pieces recently, and that's something else that was kind of a God thing. Was, God led me to embrace, what I feel he put me on earth to do, and that's to make music. So that's what I'm doing now, and I'm just embracing this music thing full heartedly. For a day job though, to supply all this, I work at a window manufacturing plant. I'm a lead operator there, so I help run operations on the dock and distributing in the distribution center in that area, in that department of our company.
Mm-hmm. What kind of music do you do?
I do a few different kinds. I do mainly I like rock. I very much like rock and roll. I'm a very rock and roll kind of guy, but I'm also experienced in playing classical music. When I was 6 years old, took my first piano lessons, and I took them for 9 years until I was 15, and I was classically trained then. So I really love classical music. I like playing that, and I can play that now. I can actually write uh, original pieces classically, and then I also play electronic dance music. I can compose it or compose that on the software that I have. R&B, hip hop, soul, um, really anything. Country's another one. Um, I know I'm missing some, but those are just some of them. But yeah,
Mm-hmm. So, what is this group called that you're active in ministry with?
they're called the Arantia Book Group, or the Arantia Book Foundation. It's not really like a massively organized group. I mean, it's just a bunch of people that have read this book, the Urantia book, and have come together to discuss it, and have study groups about it, and other people have had life-changing experiences reading this book as well. So that's really a major topic of discussion in a lot of the groups. And then just like how it transformed our lives, and then also like some of the factual pieces that it speaks about, and some of the pieces, but then also the spiritual pieces that it speaks about, and like differentiating those two. um you do have like some of your content's more spiritual. In other words, it's more like material things that might have happened like on Earth or in the distant past and things like that. The book is huge. It's 2,000 pages, and it encompasses a lot. And it's a major eye opener. At least it was for me. And it really makes sense of the Bible for me as well. Like I didn't quite understand certain things about the Bible, and like how one thing could mean this and something else mean that. But then this book, I read it and it's like, okay, now it kind of makes more sense. This kind of makes more. It's more positive. It is a positive message in this way, or it has a moral or a value in this shape, way, or form, or whatever. It made a lot of sense for me. But
Is
yeah,
it sort of like one solid book, or is it like different volumes?
so it's one book, four different parts. The first part is God in the universe. So that describes like who and what God is, and the highest concept that we could possibly realize, that He is, given our status as human beings on Earth, and not being able to comprehend all of heaven to begin with, but it tries. And then the second part is the local universe, which is like where we live and the planets that are around here, the local universe administration and heaven, the different levels of heaven or mansion worlds, and it talks about angels and different beings, seraphim, cherubim, things of that sort. Then it goes into the history of our world, which they call Urantia, and it goes from, I want to say, from the beginning of when Earth was being formed from a nebula, all the way up until 1920s or 1930s, I think it was. So it encompasses that time period, but it only touches on certain parts that are like spiritual worth, and the book kind of it basically explains itself in this way. It's kind of got this thing where like the more you read it, you're gonna have all these questions, and then like it'll answer your question, like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Or like what happened for me is that it would answer my questions, or answer these questions that I didn't even know I wanted to ask, but were just so amazed that like it answered it for me anyway. I'm like, all right, awesome, that was great. Part four of the book is the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. It's 1,000 pages of how he supposedly lived his life, his missing years, his missing childhood years, his early adulthood, his later adulthood, and then all the way up to his crucifixion and his ascension. And then like a little piece at the end from the supposed beings that wrote the book or that were involved in the book and such. It's It is definitely a powerful book. If you ever get a chance to read it, I'd strongly recommend it. Yeah, it does nothing but glorify God and Christ. And seeing how this book talked about Christ after reading the Bible first, uh, at first it was kind of hard to swallow, because I'm like, how can another book like be about Jesus? I thought there was only the Bible. Well, I started reading this book and getting more and more and more into it, and the more I read this content, the more it was like, okay, maybe there's something here, because it's not trying to like win over your heart. They're not trying to like argue a point or debate. They're not even bashing anybody or like even going after anyone. They simply just point out these better ways to live, better ways to think, and better ways of understanding different things. So that way, everything kind of connects better, and you understand the universe better and reality as a whole. But also, serving God, serving Christ, and understanding like, you're placing your identity in the universe under God. That's just some of it, man. I mean, there's a lot more than that. I strongly suggest reading it
So
though.
like
If you're interested in that sort of thing.
well, like when it talks about the beginning of the universe, does it tell you like how old the universe is and how everything came to be?
Yes, it goes into that in a lot of detail, vivid detail. Um, you know, I have been reading it for years, but there's a lot of stuff that I still don't know off the top of my head. So as far as how old the universe is, I'm not entirely sure. But luckily, for the ancient book community, they have a lot of websites out there and a lot of resources to be able to go out there and look it up, like on any of their websites. They also like use like AI for some things. Like if you want to ask like a question about the book, there's an AI program based on the book's criteria and everything that the book is on. So that when you ask a question about the book, it'll answer you to the best of its ability based on the criteria that's on the book. So then like you get this awesome detailed answer from, virtually a robot, but he explains it a lot better than most human beings could, you know? But then you also have human beings out there that explain it as well. If you're like into, podcasts and human interaction like I am. So, but yeah.
It sort of kind of sounds like Edgar Casey, like some of his writings. Like he would go into like a meditative trance, and like, he would get information and then people would write it down or something. Sort of
Yeah,
sounds like that kind of.
I've been a big Edgar Casey fan since I was, I think, 21, 22 years old. And I even joined the ARE program for a year because that's all the money I had to join their subscription at the time. But I had access to all the volumes of Edgar Casey, and I got to read a whole lot of it, a lot of articles, free articles online that I could find, anything that I could. But yeah, Edgar Casey is a fascinating case. I want to say this is similar to that. How this book came into fruition was kind of similar to that story, because I know that Edgar Casey, he gave readings to people and gave like readings about health and even sometimes like the future and things like that sort, and whatnot. These beings, when they talk to, I think it's just called the receiver, or it's some kind of distinct name that they gave him. But it's just like an ordinary guy, just a regular ordinary guy that started talking in his sleep one day, but started saying things that were talking about the universe. And then sometimes like people would start asking him questions, in the beginning, and this person would answer like vivid details and give stories and everything around like whatever they're talking about. And so they began to realize like this is something big. Like, why don't we get a whole bunch of people together and start asking more questions? And eventually, the questions started leading more towards like God and Christ, the universe, and things like that. And then they wanted to create this book so that humanity had something so they could understand the universe and God and Jesus and spiritual realities more, because I think it couldn't be better timing. If you look at how the world is now, I think it's an awesome timing for more a newer concept of spirituality and God and spiritual living and things like that. But the problem is how do you deliver it? It's not. It's great to have that idea, but how do you get it out there is really, really the question. But where there's a will, there's a way, and every problem has a solution.
Mhm. So like does Arantia, when it gets into his lost years, say that, because like I've read different legends and things about Jesus from 13 to 29 traveled to India and studied with like Buddhists and Hindus and different things like that.
So there is a segment during part 4 during his life where he sojourns to Rome, and he gets hired on by an Indian businessman who has a son who is also, his son is Indian, but he paid a lot of attention to this son throughout the whole sojourn and taught him all these awesome spiritual teachings. Like, this is actually a really big part of the book. I don't know if he might have traveled to India in a caravan, because the book talks about how he drove a caravan as part of one of his jobs that he did to help pay for his travelings and interactions with people and things like that. But this is a really big part of the book, was his sojourn in Rome with a man named Ganid and his son Ganad or something like that, one of those two. But he went on to talk about how who God was, and like just all these awesome, amazing spiritual teachings. Life. Don't be violent. There's other ways to deal with your problems. If you really do need to use self-defense, go ahead. But I don't know. It goes into a lot of different things. It's hard to just pick one thing off the top of your head, because of how much detail there is into it.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with the near-death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near-death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near-death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs, a central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs, how the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times, evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon, available on Amazon. So like in this book, what is the relationship of Jesus to God? Like,
so he is,
because like some people teach that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I got to plug my phone into charge. I apologize. So what's Jesus' relation to God?
Mm-hmm.
In the Urantia book, he is the son of God. But it also makes a distinction that there's 7 different super universes, right, that make up the grand universe, and then the middle is like the heaven of heavens that prophets and everything the Bible speaks about. But it goes on to say that there's other similar sons like Jesus Christ in other parts of the grand universe, but this is our son. Like, this is the Son of God who is like our system sovereign, I think is what it is. A system sovereign, or he's like the absolute ruler. He helped create us all. He is one with the Father. He is basically God. All intents and purposes, he is God. But he lived this life here on earth to exemplify who God was and the nature of God, to try to establish that connection. Try to help man establish that connection with God themselves. That's what he's here to do. And the main point of that story really goes into that. Is like, we're all children of God, and we need to kind of realize that, so we can open ourselves up to these greater blessings in life, in some shape, way, or form. See the positive in things and help each other out.
Mm-hmm. Does it talk about whether there's life on other planets? Oh.
Yes, it goes into life on other planets, and also life on other planes, dimensions, and things like that. It goes into talking about like how our life here on Earth is it started out as experimental life, where we kind of let evolution do its thing, and evolution was to be facilitated by divine beings, because it's such an intricate, really delicate process. It's not something that you just give human beings the power to do. But something happened in the distant past where there was a rebellion of sorts, I guess is what the book goes on to talk about. And it made progress on our planet go backwards. So people, for a very, very, very long time, just kind of went backwards in progress. It wasn't progress anymore. It's retrogression, and They wound up going back to just mating within families and, killing each other's tribes and just doing all kinds of disgusting, sickly things back then. And then giving way to worshiping snakes and fire and getting into that kind of thing. And then it goes on to talk about in detail why that happened too. And, but I guess, this kind of talks about it in the Bible as well. The Lucifer rebellion is what they call it. And, Satan's in there as well. We had a planetary prince at one point. There's all these epochs that were meant to help facilitate Earth's positive progress, towards societal advancement and civilization and everything. And not just materially, but spiritually as well. Like, you're not going to have material anything unless your mind is right and you can actually make it, make it happen, make your whatever's in your mind a reality in front of you in some shape, way, or form. Yeah, it really, really goes on to talk about that a lot. Like, that's how you live a spiritual life. And if you have these, these morals and values that you truly believe in, that you really believe are connected to God and everything like that, this is a spiritual constitution that you have that should be able to guide you through life in some shape, way, or form. And that's kind of like what connects you to God in the first place, is all these experiences that you're guided to so that you can, exercise these things and actually be a more spiritual person. It's not that your difficulties are always like something terrible or something bad's happening. It could be a God-guided thing, So that's another really big part of the book that the book goes on to talk about, is like almost providence in a sort, but only if you're willing to accept it. Free will is another big thing. You have the power of choice to choose whatever you want, and there really is there are some right or wrong choices, but not all the way. I mean, if you don't understand what you're doing, you're not going to be penalized, be like, oh, you went and did this. Well, you didn't know any better. Well, it's another thing the ancient book talks about is pointing fingers and things like that. But yeah.
Does it talk about Atlantis?
So it talks about the first Garden of Eden, and within the community there was a guy who did it was like some kind of I don't know if I'm saying it right, but a topography map, but a map that can actually read underwater, the land that's underwater, basically the seafloor. And the ancient book goes on to talk about that the first Garden of Eden was located outside of Syria. On the seas off of Syria, there used to be this land bridge that connected Syria to this peninsula, and on the peninsula was where the first Garden of Eden was. And a lot of people within the community think that perhaps maybe Atlantis was connected to this somehow. Maybe that's what it was. It just wasn't called that at the time. It was just called something else, or one thing or the other. But this guy, he went on to find that right where the ancient book was talking about, there was a sunken landmass underneath the waters that also had the shape and form of how the ancient book discovered what this land looked like, how it was shaped and everything. It's a video on YouTube. I think it's on there somewhere. I have it saved somewhere in one of my playlists, but I know it's on there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that's like I think Edgar Casey talked about the Garden of Eden was a whole community. It wasn't just two people. The two people were kind of like the heads. They were like in charge, but there was like literally thousands within their community. So it's like, because it answers questions like, well, where did Cain get his wife? Well, probably from somewhere in the community. It wasn't like incestuous.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of instances out there. It talks about there's definitely tribes and groups of people out there that thrived over the years when things were in the dark. And that's where again, probably God came in some shape, way, or form and helped guide these people. And it's, somehow, some way try to write at least something, a little bit of something to put into the Bible so that people had something that they could have that was, that could open their minds to spiritual reality, God and Christ and everything like that. But we about the Council of Nicaea and everything that came into the Bible's coming about and everything like that. It was toggled with quite a bit, so you kind of got to sift out the mud, so to speak, to be able to kind of dig out the good news, the good truth in it, such as anything that helps to serve people in a good way, not kill or beat up or maim or anything like that. But yeah,
Well, so it kind of sounds like maybe you're saying that there was multiple Garden of Eden, that there wasn't just one Garden of Eden, that there may have been some
yes.
like that came and went and came and went, but then maybe there was multiple ones on the planet at the same time. Is that possible?
Well, the book goes on to talk about how like there wasn't just the Garden of Eden at the time, and there wasn't just those two people there. Like it's just like you were saying, there's thousands of people. There was a community, and there had been people. There had been people on Earth for a long time, but Earth had come to a certain point where, and this is after the rebellion, after the fall of our planetary prince, who was supposed to facilitate our evolution and our upbringing and everything like that. But this Adam and Eve were considered what they called material sons and daughters of God. So they were here to biologically uplift humanity in a material way. So they were supposed to introduce these genetics, these genes that they had gotten from, higher powers, higher sources, and everything like that, and introduce it to humanity in a humane manner that was already planned and divinely planned to like work out and be right, be good. Like if you do it this way, it's going to be all right. But as we all know, at some point, there was a time where Eve had fallen into temptation, and then Adam had elected to follow her fate as well. Because I mean, they're mates, they loved each other, and one's not going to go off without the other. They had kids, they had a community. There's communities outside of their community of like people that were more savage. So they had to fortify their communities and kind of keep everybody safe within their own community. But also, be aware that there are savages outside of the walls, trying to come in and things like that. Not the whole world was not on the same page, just because, one tribe was, doing well, the other one was not, most of the world was in a lot of turmoil. So, but this would have been divinely planned. There was people that were involved in this. So it was over 100 years in the making, this garden. And there's just a lot that went into it. This is also another huge part of the Urantia book. And I think that's in part 3, the history of Urantia. It talks a really big part about Adam and Eve, their part in all this, genetics, human evolution, not only that, but then like I said before, this prince that was supposed to be in charge of, divine oversight of our growth and him turning and everything like that. Goes into a lot of detail about that. All these things just started, just kind of goes into each other, man. It's really interesting. And just like you were saying, like how it ties into like Edgar Casey and his name is Prince Caligastia in the Urantia book. But it goes on to tell like the ones that we know as the devil, basically. And that Beelzebub is also someone that being called a midwayer, who is not a human being, but a different being, not even an angel, just something else. A midwayer, it's really hard to describe. It's somebody that's a being that's kind of in between like a semi spiritual state called Morontia, and then an actual spiritual state, and they're able to go in between, phase in between each reality or whatever, planes or something. I'm not entirely sure on that one. You might have to look that one up just to get a clear idea, but I believe it's something along those lines.
Well, so like when Jesus came, whether you came from one of the garden communities or the savage communities, he's for everybody, right? He's for everybody that's human.
Yes. For anybody that any life at all. Jesus is always for everybody. No distinct groups, no this group or that group or this religious community or that. It's everybody, because we all come from the same source, the same source that created the entire universe, and that's not just a spiritual truth, but that's also kind of a scientific fact these days. Like they kind of find that, hey, everything and everybody's made of stardust. Well, yeah, I guess you're kind of right about that. And that kind of also ties in like how we're all connected in some shape, way, or form. We're more connected than we are separated. The more people begin to realize that, the more people are going to want to like do more for each other, like just be there for one another. Jesus planted this awesome seed, man. And the ancient book really goes on to go on about like everything that Jesus had said and taught. And it really, really does paint like one of those powerful pictures you'll ever hear in your life. Like, just being here to serve humanity and, be there for one another. that might seem simple to some people, but in a day and age where it's really not easy to live at all, man. Like, there's just so much out there. The one that can actually smile through the hellfire and help people out, even while they're struggling, is truly a hero. My point of view, I guess. And also, the book goes on and talked about that as well. It really shines upon morals and values and guiding people to, enact this change within you to be more godlike, follow Christ more, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I mean, does it talk about like Neanderthals? Were they sort of in the book too? And
Yeah,
some of the
it
other
goes on to talk
peoples,
about them.
like mm-hmm.
Yeah, it goes on to talk about Neanderthals and then like other humanoid beings or whatever that had come up from being just like products of evolution, basically. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of like different humanoid beings out there, but because like at the time, how everything was, it was only the strong survive. Whoever can adapt the most and get over, these obstacles in their ways the most, those are the ones that are going to live the most, the best. So there's a lot of like messed up things going on in the beginning of our evolution that kind of led us to become the human beings that we are today. So we're not going anywhere. The world's not going to end for us or anything like that. We're changing. We're beginning to change into becoming more better beings and better people all in general. But it just, I know it doesn't seem like it now, but it's slow going. But eventually the world will, come to see, that, we need to be here for one another and there's a better life to be lived for everybody, and you're not going to get there unless, you help each other out. There's no lone wolf in this. So, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, like, do you like do regular Bible studies too and things like that? Do you go to a church or anything?
Sometimes I go to church, maybe like once or twice a month with my family. We'll go to church, and then I do read the Bible. I want to say almost daily, almost daily. I have my phone set to like, if I'm ever on social media or anything like that, it's filled with like Bible and Urantia and God and Christ and things like that. Like I'm able to like kind of, I don't want to say trick the algorithm, but I mean, get it to where the algorithm knows like, hey, I want this stuff on my phone and on my social media accounts and everything. That way, no matter what I'm doing, it's always there, you know. And then, of course, there's also times where like I outright read from the book itself. All those books. The ancient book, the Bible. Uh, every now and then, I'll go read what was it, the Bhagavad Gita or whatever. That one got me when I was younger. I thought it was pretty interesting. Not that I believe everything that's written in there, but it's still interesting. The narrative and everything like that. Yeah, I'm a big history buff myself. I really like I enjoy reading about history and especially ancient history and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, is there like one final word you could leave with the audience that that would be of benefit to them? Like, what is like one final word you'd like to leave with the audience?
Sure, absolutely. I think the most beneficial thing that anybody could come to understand or come to realize here on earth while you're alive is to come to understand who God is within. So, I mean, if you have time out of the day to pray or have time out of the day to go meditate, I mean, do both. You can. But these are really key essential things to living a spiritual life. Like you want to pray for these things to getting better. Don't pray for everything around you to be easier. Pray to be stronger. And then you'll get the answers from within. So that way, you'll have the spiritual tools necessary within you to overcome these obstacles that are in front of you because they're there for a reason. You got to get over them and you got to be strong enough to overcome them. You can't change other people. You can only change yourself. So God is all the way that, is there for you all the way to do that. And I believe that if if you're on board and you really want to do this and you really are sincere about like living that God, living their life for God and, just drinking whatever cup may come, he'll be there for you. The whole universe will be there for you, so pray, meditate, and, keep studying on, keep asking questions, ask God all the questions you want, knock and you shall answer, or ask and you shall receive. So, but yeah, I'll leave them with that message.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on today. And I know people can reach you on your Facebook page. Is there anywhere else where they could reach you?
So I have music pages set up on TikTok, Instagram, Threads. I'm missing one. SoundCloud. That's another one. I'm getting used to using all these social media accounts. I'm just doing it for music. I want to get my music out there and eventually start making that like my life work. Get paid to do that. I think God gives you gifts. You should probably use it in your life. But yeah, they can reach me on those apps
Mhm.
right there. Those accounts.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me, man. It's been a great opportunity and great experience. I really appreciate it.
Have you ever wanted to learn to meditate? Check out my book, Meditation for Everyone: How to Quickly Have a More Peaceful, Mindful, and Fulfilled Life, and support this channel. With Meditation for Everyone, you will learn to quickly and easily meditate, relieve stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and have more joy, peace, and relaxation. What you will learn: mindfulness, the art of stillness, step by step on how to meditate, strategies for overcoming challenges to meditation, and much more. D. Mason said this is a nice meditation book, even for those already meditating. I agree with the statements that it will help to have a more peaceful, mindful, and fulfilled life. 4.6 star rating, available on Amazon.